user. And maybe the story that I wanted to tell very briefly is, actually the first time I drove a self-driving vehicle was in 2013, and I had a friend who worked at Waymo, and he offered to give me a drive around Palo Alto. I took this picture using Google Glass at the time, and many of you are so young that you might not even know what that is. Yeah, this was like all the rage at the time. And we got into this car, and we went for about a 30-minute drive around Palo Alto, highways, streets, and so on. And this drive was perfect. There was 0 interventions. And this was 2013, which is now 12 years ago. And it kind of struck me because at the time when I had this perfect drive, this perfect demo, I felt like, wow, self-driving is imminent because this just worked. This is incredible. But here we are 12 years later, and we are still working on autonomy. We are still working on driving agents. And even now, we haven't actually like fully solved the problem. Like you may see Waymos going around and they look driverless, but there's still a lot of teleoperation and a lot of human in the loop of a lot of this driving. So we still haven't even like declared success, but I think it's definitely like going to succeed at this point, but it just took a long time. And so I think software is really tricky, I think, in the same way that driving is tricky. And so when I see things like, oh, 2025 is the year of agents, I get very concerned. And I kind of feel like, this is the decade of agents. And this is going to be quite some time. We need humans in the loop. We need to do this carefully. This is software. Let's be serious here. One more kind of analogy that I always think through is the Iron Man suit. I always love Iron Man. I think it's like so correct in a bunch of ways with respect to technology and how it will play out. And what I love about the Iron Man suit is that it's both an augmentation, and Tony Stark can drive it, and it's also an agent. And in some of the movies, the Iron Man suit is quite autonomous and can fly around and find Tony and all this kind of stuff. And so this is the autonomy slider, is we can build augmentations or we can build agents. And we kind of want to do a bit of both. But at this stage, I would say working with fallible LLMs and so on, I would say, it's less Iron Man robots and more Iron Man suits that you want to build. It's less like building flashy demos of autonomous agents and more building partial autonomy products. And these products have custom GUIs and UI UX, and we're trying to, and this is done so that the generation verification loop of the human is very, very fast. But we are not losing the sight of the fact that it is in principle possible to automate this work. And there should be an autonomy slider in your product, and you should be thinking about how you can slide that autonomy slider and make your product more autonomous over time. But this is kind of how I think there's lots of opportunities in these kinds of products. I want to now switch gears a little bit and talk about one other dimension that I think is very unique. Not only is there a new type of programming language that allows for autonomy in software, but also, as I mentioned, it's programmed in English, which is this natural interface. And suddenly, everyone is a programmer because everyone speaks natural language like English. So this is extremely bullish and very interesting to me, and also completely unprecedented, I would say. It used to be the case that you need to spend 5 to 10 years studying something to be able to do something in software. This is not the case anymore. So I don't know if, by any chance, anyone has heard of vibe coding. This is the tweet that kind of like introduced this, but I'm told that this is now like a major meme. Fun story about this is that I've been on Twitter for like 15 years or something like that at this point, and I still have no clue which tweet will become viral and which tweet like fizzles and no one cares. And I thought that this tweet was going to be the latter. I don't know, it was just like a shower of thoughts, but this became like a total meme, and I really just can't tell. But I guess like it struck a chord, and it gave a name to something that everyone was feeling, but couldn't quite say in words. So now there's a Wikipedia page and everything. This is like... Yeah, this is like a major contribution now or something like that. So, so Tom Wolfe from Hugging Face shared this beautiful video that I really love. These are kids vibe coding. And I find that this is such a wholesome video. Like, I love this video. Like, how can you look at this video and feel bad about the future? The future is great. I think this will end up being like a gateway drug to software development. I'm not a doomer about the future of the generation. And I think, yeah, I love this video. So I tried vibe coding a little bit as well because it's so fun. So vibe coding is so great when you want to build something super duper custom that doesn't appear to exist and you just want to wing it because it's a Saturday or something like that. So I built this iOS app, and I can't actually program in Swift, but I was really shocked that I was able to build like a super basic app, and I'm not gonna explain it, it's really dumb. But I kind of this was just like a day of work, and this was running on my phone like later that day, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I didn't have to like read through Swift for like 5 days or something like that to like get started. I also vibe coded this app called MenuGen, and this is live. You can try it in menugen.app. And I basically had this problem where I show up at a restaurant, I read through the menu, and I have no idea what any of the things are, and I need pictures. So this doesn't exist. So I was like, hey, I'm gonna vibe code it. So this is what it looks like. You go to menugen.app, and you take a picture of a menu, and then MenuGen generates the images. And everyone gets $5 in credits for free when you sign up. And therefore, this is a major cost center in my life. So this is a negative revenue app for me right now. I've lost a huge amount of money on MenuGen. Okay, but the fascinating thing about MenuGen for me is that the code of the vibe coding part, the code, was actually the easy part of vibe coding MenuGen. And most of it actually was when I tried to make it real so that you can actually have authentication and payments and the domain name and a versal deployment. This was really hard, and all of this was not code. All of this DevOps stuff was in me in the browser clicking stuff. And this was extreme slog and took another week. So it was really fascinating that I had the MenuGen basically demo working on my laptop in a few hours, and then it took me a week because I was trying to make it real. And the reason for this is this was just really annoying. So for example, if you try to add Google login to your web page, I know this is very small, but just a huge amount of instructions of this clerk library telling me how to integrate this. And this is crazy, like it's telling me, go to this URL, click on this dropdown, choose this, go to this, and click on that. And it's like telling me what to do. Like a computer is telling me the actions I should be taking. Like, you do it. Why am I doing this? What the hell? I had to follow all these instructions. This was crazy. So I think the last part of my talk, therefore, focuses on, can we just build for agents? I don't want to do this work. Can agents do this? Thank you. Okay. So roughly speaking, I think there's a new category of consumer and manipulator of digital information. It used to be just humans through GUIs or computers through APIs. And now we have a completely new thing. And agents they're computers, but they are human-like, kind of, right? They're people spirits. There's people spirits on the internet, and they need to interact with our software infrastructure. Like, can we build for them? It's a new thing. So as an example, you can have robots.txt on your domain, and you can instruct or like advise, I suppose, web crawlers on how to behave on your website. In the same way, you can have maybe llms.txt file, which is just a simple markdown that's telling LLMs what this domain is about. And this is very readable to an LLM. If it had to instead get the HTML of your web page and try to parse it, this is very error-prone and difficult, and it will screw it up, and it's not going to work. So we can just directly speak to the LLM. It's worth it. A huge amount of documentation is currently written for people. So you will see things like lists and bold and pictures, and this is not directly accessible by an LLM. So I see some of the services now are transitioning a lot of their docs to be specifically for LLMs. So Vercel and Stripe, as an example, are early movers here, but there are a few more that I've seen already. And they offer their documentation in Markdown. Markdown is super easy for LLMs to understand. This is great. Maybe one simple example from my experience as well. Maybe some of you know 3 Blue 1 Brown. He makes beautiful animation videos on YouTube. Yeah, I love this library so that he wrote Manin. And I wanted to make my own. And there's extensive documentations on how to use Manin. And so I didn't want to actually read through it. So I copy-pasted the whole thing to an LLM. And I described what I wanted, and it just worked out of the box. Like, LLM just vibe-coded me in animation exactly what I wanted, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. So if we can make docs legible to LLMs, it's going to unlock a huge amount of kind of use. And I think this is wonderful and should happen more. The other thing I wanted to point out is that you do unfortunately have to, it's not just about taking your docs and making them appear in Markdown. That's the easy part. We actually have to change the docs, because anytime your docs say click, this is bad. An LLM will not be able to natively take this action right now. So Vercel, for example, is replacing every occurrence of click with the equivalent curl command that your LLM agent could take on your behalf. And so I think this is very interesting. And then, of course, there's a model context protocol from Anthropic, and this is also another way. It's a protocol of speaking directly to agents as this new consumer and manipulator of digital information. So I'm very bullish on these ideas. The other thing I really like is a number of little tools here and there that are helping ingest data that in like very LLM-friendly formats. So for example, when I go to a GitHub repo, like my NanoGPT repo, I can't feed this to an LLM and ask questions about it because it's, this is a human interface on GitHub. So when you just change the URL from GitHub to git ingest, then this will actually concatenate all the files into a single giant text, and it will create a directory structure, etc. And this is ready to be copy-pasted into your favorite LLM, and you can do stuff. Maybe even more dramatic example of this is DeepWiki, where it's not just the raw content of these files. This is from Devin. But also, like, they have Devin basically do analysis of the GitHub repo, and Devin basically builds up a whole docs pages just for your repo. And you can imagine that this is even more helpful to copy-paste into your LLM. So I love all the little tools that basically where you just change the URL and it makes something accessible to an LLM. So this is all well and great, and yeah, I think there should be a lot more of it. One more note I wanted to make is that it is absolutely possible that in the future, LLMs will be able to, this is not even future, this is today, they'll be able to go around and they'll be able to click stuff and so on. But I still think it's very worth basically meeting LLMs halfway, and making it easier for them to access all this information, because this is still fairly expensive, I would say, to use, and a lot more difficult. And so I do think that lots of software, there will be a long tail where it won't like adapt, because these are not like live player sort of repositories or digital infrastructure, and we will need these tools. But I think for everyone else, I think it's very worth kind of like meeting in some middle point. So I'm bullish on both, if that makes sense. So in summary, what an amazing time to get into the industry. We need to rewrite a ton of code. A ton of code will be written by professionals and vibe coders. These LLMs are kind of like utilities, kind of like fabs, but they're kind of especially like operating systems. But it's so early. It's like 1960s of operating systems. And I think a lot of the analogies cross over. And these LLMs are kind of like these fallible people spirits that we have to learn to work with. And in order to do that properly, we need to adjust our infrastructure towards it. So when you're building these LLM apps, I described some of the ways of working effectively with these LLMs and some of the tools that make that possible, and how you can spin this loop very, very quickly and basically create partial autonomy products. And then, yeah, a lot of code has to also be written for the agents more directly. But in any case, going back to the Iron Man suit analogy, I think what we'll see over the next decade, roughly, is we're going to take the slider from left to right, and it's going to be very interesting to see what that looks like, and I can't wait to build it with all of you. Thank you.